Alright, so this is a deck profile for Darklords, also called the Tenchi or Fallen One or Fallen Angel, depending on how you choose to translate it. This is for the TCG Banlist, but we're using cards from the OCG up until Invasion of Venom. So, and the side deck choices and extra deck choices will be a reflection of that. So let's begin. First, we have three Darklord Ixtabs, and this is probably the best card in our deck because it's our draw power, and in addition, it helps us set up our grave with more Darklords to summon and Darklord spells and traps to use, especially the traps because they're kind of dead in hand. So you want them in the grave so you can use them for free because they actually do have a pretty meaningful cost in that you have to discard or get rid of a Darklord monster from your hand or field. Next up is Superbia. We use three of him too because he's our free special summon, and more importantly, he lets us special summon in attack mode, so we can summon our strongest Dark Lord, which would be, I guess, himself. But if you summon himself again, you just can't use his effect. So you have to keep that in mind. But like, let's say for example, Christia. Christia's our highest beater other than Superbia. You can summon Christia in attack mode, and now not only can he stop special summons, he's also a massive beater. And the reason I mention this is because Altar of the Dark Lords special summons in defense mode, so it's not an OTK enabler like Superbia is. And since I mentioned it before, three times Christia, this card will it can lead to bricks in hand, but it's just too good not to run because if you can summon this guy and if you can summon him over and over again with Superbia, your opponent will have a very hard time dealing with you because they'll spend a lot of resources or just simply lose the game waiting for an out to Christia. Next is Mastema. We use him because he sets up the grave by sending two other Dark Lords in your hand that are bricking your hand to the grave. And because it summons itself, you can summon it in attack mode. And that's, again, important for setting up your OTK. However, because you have to discard two other cards to summon him, it requires a lot of commitment to summon. And not only that, if you have your effect negated, it's devastating because you just basically lost three cards and they just used one to negate it. But even without it, it's still a three card combo, and three card combos are inconsistent, which is why we only use two of him. Next is Darklord Amdusias. He's really good for two main reasons. One is that he lets us recycle our Altar of the Dark Lords in our grave, so that if we can't summon a Dark Lord, we can still use uh, our Amadusias, to revive our Dark Lords for free, basically by getting Altar. And another reason he's really good is because he's level 6, which means that he is the only Dark Lord in our deck that only needs one tribute summon. And this is important because we use Monarch Stormforce in our side deck, so you can just tribute one of your opponent's monsters to summon this guy. The reason we only use two and not three of all these positives is because Dark Lord's main weakness is actually like getting started. Because of all the high level monsters you run, you're prone to bricks, and it's really hard for you to set up your grave or make any plays at all at the beginning. So if you get to use this guy's effect, that most likely means your grave is already set up, and you just need to access one of the cards in your grave quickly. For that reason, we only use two Amadusias, not three, because he is a bricky card that lets us extend that it starts our combo for us, but we need to have our grave set up for him to be useful. Our other level 6 is 3 Vanity's Fiends. We use this for the same reason as Christia, because without special summoning, he's rather hard to get over. And because he's one tribute as well, you can summon one Dark Lord if you have one in the grave. And you don't need to loop Altar of the Dark Lords if your other Dark Lord effects, because you only have one Dark Lord in the grave, right? So it's not like you have anything to summon it with. But you can't end your field with just one Dark Lord, because they have no protection, and yeah, they're high beaters, but it's not that hard to get rid of one monster. If you only have one Dark Lord on the field, you're probably going to get OTK'd next turn. So we'd want to have, if we could only have one monster on the field, we'd want one that will protect us. That will stop their opponent's plays and make them find a way out of you out of your board before they can start worrying about OTKing you. And for us, that's Vanity's Fiend, which is why we use 3 of him. 2 Max C is a staple in this format because of how much draw power there is. Not how much draw power there is, sorry. How much special summoning there is. And like I said before, the hard time we have is because of all our discarding, we tend to run out of our hand really quickly. And it's hard for us to get started because we need cards in our grave. We just set up our grave of cards. And it's hard to do that with without having to summon any monsters. We can only use cards from our hand, so we better have as many cards in our hand as possible, and Maxi ensures that for us. Allure of Darkness is an interesting card for this deck, because while it does get rid of discard targets from our hand, it also powers through the deck to access our important cards quicker. Because like I said, for example, Amadusias is useless early on because you have the thing in your grave, so why not just allure it and maybe get an Ixstab out of it? And then with Ixstab, you can start setting up your combos. Another key thing to remember is that because we can use our spells and traps from the grave, it's not actually all that bad to banish your entire hand. Like, or not banish your entire hand, sorry, discard your entire hand. Like, let's say you have Superbia in the grave already, you have Altar of the Darklords in your hand, you just set Altar of the Darklords, blind allure, let's say you get lucky and draw Christia, and who knows, maybe this card, Casting Out the Darkness. It doesn't matter. You discard both. Usually that'd be a huge loss, but because we can summon we can summon Superbia with Altar of the Dark Lords, and then summon him with his effect, summon Christia. We actually don't lose all that much. In fact, I'd argue that we'd actually be in a more favorable position than before because now we have Christia on our field. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you have a setup grave already, and if you have a card that can make a play, it might be worth it to discard your hand just to get cards in the grave to extend your play with. Next up, we have Two Pots of Desires. This card is a staple this format. It helps us power through our deck really quickly. The +1 is amazing because, like I said before, we run out of cards in our hand very fast with all our discard effects. And not only, the reason I only use 2 and not 3, despite how good it is because it's just not possible to use 3 in a 40 card deck. Like, it's not mathematically possible. You can calculate it yourself. Up next is 3 Trade In. This is a weird card for me because we only have 6 targets, but you don't really need the 6 targets in your hand. Like, if you have Superbia but no Ixstab, what's the point of having Superbia? And Christia is kind of useless in your hand anyway, because you're not going to be able to special summon him. So I'd say trade in is mostly to pitch your dead Christias, have them in the grave so you can summon them Superbia later on. Soul Charge is, well, it's Soul Charge. In a deck that summons as many beaters as we do, and sends as many cards to the grave as we do, Soul Charge is really necessary. Keep in mind that while Arch of the Dark Lords will revive your monsters too, if it's in the grave, you need to pay 1000 LP to use it. So the cost is the same. Now, the argument is, should I use Soul Charge or should I use Altar? Well, the difference pretty much only depends on state in the game. If it's late game and you have no cards in your deck, then you might actually prefer to Soul Charge for 1 and then use your Dark Lords to loop Altar and send it back into the deck. That way you can draw it later on, and if your field gets cleared, you have a way back into the game. However, if it's early on, your chances of drawing Altar after shuffling back aren't that high, so you might want to just keep it in the grave because that way you'll make sure you can extend your combos later on. And you'll probably have Dark Lords, Altar of the Dark Lords in your deck anyway. At least that's how I see the distinction. I might be wrong, I don't know, but that's just how I see it. Upstart Goblin is because we do have consistency issues, sorry. So we want to have as few cards in our deck as possible. For us, that's 39 because it's limited. We just want to get through our deck quickly. 3 Casting Out the Dark Lords. This is an obvious one. It searches out any card in our deck. There's no reason not to run 3. Twin Twisters. We don't want to go up against any floodgates or trap cards. Solemn Strikes, for example. Like I said, for example, with Mastema. Ixtab. Like, you discard your cards to use your effects. If you get those effects negated, you're in a really bad spot. So you just want to make sure to get rid of any back row before you start anything. We brick a lot. I've been stressing this a lot. We brick a lot, and when we brick, we can't do anything. Like, we have no monsters that are normal summonable. Well, they're normal summonable, but like you need to tribute summon for them. So we need Drowning Mirror Force. We won't have any monsters on our field, so we need Drowning Mirror Force to keep us alive. The traps are amazing. They're really good. Non-targeted destruction and a non-targeted change of heart. This one gets rid of problematic floodgates and maybe beaters we can't beat over. This one steals our opponent's monsters, makes them fight for us. It gives them back, yeah, but we could always tribute them for Vanity's Fiend. The reason, even though they're amazing, we still only use one of each because the costs are pretty significant since you have to go -1 to use them. And not only that, they break your hand very early on, so it's actually very beneficial to discard them for the effects of your other Dark Lords. And it doesn't even matter we only use one anyways, because they go back into our deck and they can be used from the grave because of the Dark Lord's effects. So one will be all we need for our deck. We don't need to see it as often as we don't need to really see it even, because we can just search it out with casting out the Dark Lords. Finally, one Vanity's Emptiness. We have a lot of really strong beaters. Your opponent will not be able to get over it if we have Vanity's Emptiness on the field. Up next, we have our extra deck, and you'll see one very common denominator between most of these cards at least. It's that they're targets for Ghost Reaper. ABC we obviously use for the ABC deck. It's their main boss monster, and we don't need it right away because we don't have problem getting rid of one, but we win by summoning multiple of these and just simply out advantaging us. So we want to get rid of as many as possible. Elemental Hero Absolute Zero is a Reaper target for heroes. This way they can't OTK us if we brick but have drowning. That's all it's for. It's to protect our SPAC row. Darklaw, it's an obvious hero target. We want to be able to use our grave. We can't really beat heroes if Darklaw is out, so we need to Ghost Reaper it. We better Ghost Reaper it or it's pretty much GG. Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, Ghost Reaper target. It lets us it basically means that we don't have to worry about running over 3000 wall anymore, and we don't have to worry about whatever it floats into, because whatever it floats into, like Moonlight Rose Dragon, can really mess up our combos. Hyper Librarian is for this deck in the OCG. I'll admit I haven't done much research into it. It's called Dark Synchro, and to my knowledge, it plays really similar to the Synchro Fusionist deck that was here in the TCG. The way it keeps up is by using Hyper Librarian to generate a lot of hand advantage, and using that hand advantage to like fuel their discard effects for let's say Jet Synchron, and basically if they don't have enough cards in hand, if they don't have enough draw power, they can't get to their combo pieces. They can't pay the costs for their combo pieces, like Plague Spreader, for example, and they won't be able to loop your hand out and stuff like that. So we want to banish Hyper Librarian, even though there's only one of it. Number 77 goes up with number 35. We use them as walls, especially if Vanity's Emptiness or Vanity's Fiend. We can use those after we summon these because they'll be very hard to get rid of. And especially Ravenous Tarantula and 77 Sins is because they're huge beaters. Well, in the case of Tarantula, it's more like huge walls. But they just have a hard time getting over them while Vanity's is on the field. So that's why we use these two. 81, we obviously can't summon it, but it's a good Reaper target for rank 10 trains. And that's mainly because we don't really have any way of getting over this card if it makes itself unaffected. 38 is a good Reaper target because we don't want our casting out the Dark Lords or Ultra of the Dark Lords to be stopped. So because they're important combo pieces, we really want to be able to play them. So we really want to be able to Reaper 38. Not only that, but 38 is actually a good target for ourselves to go into if we manage to get 2 Superbias on the field. I'll say is another rank 30 is a rank another rank 8, and it helps us set up our grave and it helps us remove a card from the field. It's not the greatest thing to go into, but it's better than nothing, right? M7 is a great card for us to go into with Amdusias because it lets us recycle our own cards from the grave and it can remove a problem card from the opponent's side of the field. Likewise, Beatrice is a rank 6 that is also good for us to go into because she can set up our grave. But in addition, she can also be a Reaper target, and that can really mess up some BA players. Although I do believe the Reaper target is still Dante. The main problem I have with Dante, though, is that once they get out one copy of Dante, that's really what they need. So, in my personal preference, once again, I could be wrong, but this is just how I play. I choose to get rid of Dante early on, but if they summon Dante, they can just recycle it over and over again with like Seer and Monster Reincarnation. So I'd prefer to get rid of Beatrice instead, so I don't have to worry about that wall. Um, Another target. This one's mainly out of fear. I don't really know what the deck is capable of, but I'm still scared of it. I want to be able to Reaper MX Saber Invoker so that sub-terrors don't have an easy way into Nemesis Warrior. Finally, our last Reaper target is Tree Toad. This is for Atlanteans, for heroes, for whatever janky deck my opponent may have to turbo this guy out, because holy hell, this thing's annoying to play against. And they run multiples of it too. It's really problematic if they summon multiples of this card. So you Ghost Reaper it as fast as possible. I just pray I draw into Ghost Reaper when I'm playing against frogs or Atlanteans or the like. And if they do summon it, we still have our side deck. We can Gamma Seal it. We can Gamma Seal Tree Toad. We can Gamma Seal the Kaijus. Retaliating Sea is mainly for Metal Foes, and that's because Metal Foes Fusion, they typically only run one of it, and when we summon this card, we'll banish not only their materials, they can't use them again in the extra deck, or cycle them off combination and not combination, sorry, the other Metal Foes trap. But they can't recycle them anymore. And not only that, it gets rid of Metal Foes fusion, and that is so key to playing against Metal Foes because now they have no recurring target to destroy their own cards to set. They can't +1 off the draw, and they can still summon one more fusion usually because they use full Metal Foes fusion too. But losing Metal Foes fusion is such a pain for them. The reason I don't use more Retaliating Sea is because I have a lot of other side deck options that are also for Metal Foes. Ghost Reaper is the card I've been talking about all game. Um, there shouldn't be a surprise I use 2. I don't use 3 though because we typically only need 1 for it to have its full effect. 2 just kind of breaks your if you draw 2 it kind of breaks your hand, so you only use 2. I don't ever want to draw 3 of this card. I want to see it fast, but I want to see more than 1 of it, so I just use 2, not 3. DD Crow stops the Graves effect of Blue Eye Stones, the Burning Abyss and Phantom Knights cards, and we can also banish Metal Foes fusion with it. You can also banish Metal Foes combination, um, although I don't suppose that would do much. It's the other Metal Foes trap card I'm worried about, the one that still escapes my name. But that's basically what we use it for, especially in North America. I don't know if the ruling exists for the rest of the world yet. I know it is used during Worlds, but I don't know if the rest of the world adopted the ruling. It's where if you discard a trigger effect for a cost, and you chain DD Crow to the card that discarded the card, then you can banish the card they discarded and they won't get the effect in a new chain. So let's say my opponent uses Twin Twisters, sends a Graph, Malabranch of the Burning Abyss. I can DD Crow Graph and they won't get Graph's effect. System down, Cosmo and ABC. I only use one because I have Gamma Seal to mess with Cosmos, and I have Gamma Seal to mess with Cosmos already. Magical Spring basically ends the turn against Metal Foes players, and in addition, it helps us cycle through our deck so that we can actually draw our useful cards and send our combo pieces to the grave Twin Twisters, like I said before, we hate back row. Disruption really kills us. So if they have like a demise deck, for example, we definitely want Twin Twisters. By demise deck, I mean card of demise, obviously, not the King of Armageddon. The Monarch Stormforce is limited. It's still good though as a one of. We can use it to tribute our opponent's monsters for Vanity's Fiend and Darklord Amdusias. This is a really good card for Cosmo because they only have one Dark Destroyer now. If we get rid of their one Dark Destroyer, they can't really summon another one if we have Vanity's Fiend out. Mystical Rift Panel. This is more of a tech card, a personal tech card for me because it messes so much with players who use Pot of Desires, which I am one of. Yeah. But it messes with Pot of Desires because they have to banish 10 cards and you get to draw 2. And it just hurts so much to have this used against you. So I use one copy of this card just in case. I will always use one copy of this card in decks like these just to make sure I have as much chance of drawing as possible. Finally, we have Eradicator Epidemic Virus. We have so many beaters in our deck. This is such a blowout card, especially against demise decks. We can just get rid of all of their traps and they can't do anything at all basically. And we can just OTK them the next turn, or it gives us some time to set up our fields. So now that you've seen the deck and you've seen why I play each card, let's get into some duels.